Leonard, you
Yes.
come from Ireland.
Yes.
You were born in Dublin, and you often return to your home country. Does your life there influence your work to date?
I think it's an integral part of my work and will continue to be regardless of where I'm living, I think. But it's not from a nostalgic or sentimental point of view, really. The sea is part of the work, not merely as a view or a seascape, but more about the sense of its space and primary elements and depth. It evokes something left behind. Sporadic views into the depths of the space and the landscape are possible. It's tempting to imagine the direction in which the veil and fog will lift and reveal a new insight. Then there are nautical maps and references drawn in, once again evoking an idea of space distances that have to be overcome, as endless expanses are limited by lines and reference points. It makes orientation possible, becomes comprehensible and manageable. It's a kind of a game of dimensions. Yes, I use charts as a microcosm of a kind of a broader thing, like the Dublin Bay chart I've used in a couple of works. And in my early childhood, I remember exploring that area quite extensively, and it was only recently that I started to pinpoint areas on it, and I included them in a work. And there was over 50 places with names and positions and navigational reference points, parallel to this Dublin. So it's been that type of thing has been referred to in literature, places like cities that an entire story is built on,
When you came to Austria, did your work change in any way? Were there obvious differences between the two environments?
Yes, in a way, materially, first of all. There was, for example, road salt, a material that's strewn about the street in wintertime. The problem with using this material was that it needed to be preserved, and so it took quite a while to develop a technique in which to do that, and it was quite labour intensive, and I don't do too much of works with this material. It's but I don't use materials for the sake of just texture. There has to be a reason behind it, and the salt for me, it's one of the most ancient human materials of value. Where does drawing fit into the steps or the process in the paintings? I kind of see them as separate entities in a way. They help me focus a bit more, and because I tend to treat them as kind of graphic pieces, like a graphic design piece in a way, and my training as a graphic artist comes in then, I suppose. And they are occasionally link directly to the bigger oil paintings or mixed media paintings, but not always. So they're an entity in themselves, really. I think going back to my childhood, I was very interested in sign writing, and in fact a school colleague took up sign writing when he was in school, and it became a business for him, and this impressed me a great deal, and I went about doing it several summers, doing jobs, but I was never particularly good at it, but at least it gave me an insight into the whole craft of it, you know. I worked on a trawler for a short period of time. Not long after that, I started this series of icons for fishermen. Trawlers that were being broken up in Arklow Harbour. It was a new EU scheme in which to try and get rid of the old fleet. And from this wood, I took these pieces and decided to make something with them. And the portraits came out of this actually after a visit to Cyprus. But they grew out of a process, and they took about 10 years in making them. The sea is a place both of confinement and freedom, and a place of tragedy also. People will always work and play and swim and eat from it. To move over it, stay above it, or vanish in it has echoes of eternity. It represents too a freedom, a way out, an escape, a transit route to dissolve from this world, or to try and make the shores of a better one. Inspired by a small work in the National Museum in Dublin, modelled first century made gold, it's called the Broher boat, well known to many people, a beautiful piece of work, absolutely timeless. Really only a few elements. There's sea and sky, and obviously wind and rain, and and tide as well. Unlike the land, there's that extra chunk in between something, because you can be in the sea and 360 degrees. There's absolutely nothing, only that horizon line. And you don't know what's coming along on it. I feel in many respects more safe on it than I do on the land, in a way. You're in a womb, so to speak. You can hear you're in this vessel, and it's surrounded by a moving liquid. Which you are trying to map out a journey on. In 1996, I was lucky enough to be part of the crew of the Spice Islands voyage to Indonesia. The region we were sailing in was devoid of any navigational aids, or the charts were very basic. There was nothing land, be it lighthouses or any really good marks to go by. It was all by stars, actually. And we were right back to kind of primitive times, and actually sailing on a very ancient type of boat, so it all seemed very appropriate. "13 years after I made the small studies for this series, having read Claudio Magri's book Danube, a marvellous book about the river in Middle Europe and recounting its history with all sorts of stories, but sometimes only the barest connection, or directly or indirectly, with the history of the river. They acted like a narrative tributary, if you like, and these interventions or interruptions, they unhinge you as you're going along, but in fact they expand the idea of what a journey might be. It was this aspect of his book was how I wanted to try and approach these bigger works. So I got into making small films kind of by accident, really. It was part of a school's project. It's an entirely different thing to the painting, which is not always illustrative or obvious. With painting, I'm trying to invite the viewer in to the picture, if you like. Film, on the other hand, as it requires more of a demand, if you like. But as soon as I put my eye to the lens of making a film, I always felt I need to tell a story. It's almost a kind of automatic, and the story can be narrative, spoken word, obviously, but I use sometimes text or words that denote kind of chapters in the film or sequences that I want to pay particular attention to, along with appropriate music to highlight a particular sequence.